name's Dana Brown. I'm Xojo's Marketing Director. And in this tutorial, we're going to see how to create a recent items menu for our Xojo desktop apps. Let's start by showing the result of what we want to achieve so we can better understand the process later. As you can see here, we have the recent items entry under the file menu. That is a sub-menu that at this point has no entries. In order to make things simpler, our user interface simply has a button that displays a file selection dialog when pressed. So the user can select any kind of file, and when they confirm the selection, that file will be added as a new entry under the Recent Items submenu. Let's select a second file, and we can verify how it is also added to our Recent Items submenu. In addition, our example application will display a message box displaying the name and the original path of the menu item selected. So here we can see the file name of the selected item and also the path pointing to the original file. So how can we create these dynamic menus and add them to an existing menu and react to the user selection of these menus? Now let's see one of the possible approaches to accomplish this. The first thing is to access the menu editor for the by default main menu bar project item. Here you can see that we added the Recent Items menu item using the fourth button from the right in the menu editor toolbar. Once added, we can set its properties, like the text to be displayed by the menu item, in this case Recent Items, and also enable the submenu property to tell the OS that this entry will contain more menu items in its hierarchy. Of course, we also need to set the instance name, being here the name that we will be using from our Xojo code. But in order to create new menu items dynamically, we need to add a new class to our Xojo project. That class will be based on the existing menu item class, something that is set in the super section in the inspector panel, where we can also set the class name as myMenuItem. Why do we need to create our own menu item subclass? Just because we need to implement the action event handler. This is the event that will be fired every time the user selects a menu item, so it is a good place to catch the name of the menu item selected and also the associated tag, amongst other things. When this event handler is fired in a class instance, we need to use some kind of mechanism to inform the app about the menu item selected by the user, passing along all the parameters of interest. In this case, we'll use a delegate data type for that. Here you can see the menu item callback delegate whose signature includes two string parameters, caption and value. With the delegate in place, now we can add a new property to the class and set its data type to menu item callback, as it is the case for the menu item callback property added to our class. So this property will be able to store a reference to any method whose signature adheres to the one set in our delegate data type. In fact, that will be the method called by our class instances every time the user selects the menu item and passing along its text and tag values as parameters, as we can see in the code included in the action method. That's everything the class needs to do, so let's move to the app object now because we want to work on the recent items entries from the more global object. So the first thing we need to do, as you saw at the beginning, is to enable both the recent items menu as any of the possible menu items on its hierarchy. For that, we need to add the enable menu items event handler to the app object. This event handler will be fired every time the user clicks on the menu bar, so we can decide which menu items to display as enabled and which not. As we want to show all these items as enabled, that is both the recent items added to the file menu as all the possible menu items added to it dynamically, and that will be based on the myMenuItem class. Then we simply need to access the enabled property for the file recent items instance and set the value to true. Then we only need to iterate all the possible menu items that are included in the file recent items submenu to set their enabled property to true. We access every child on the file recent items menu using the menu@method and using the n variable as the index for the child menu item to retrieve. The way to create these child menu items is based in our MyMenuItem class through the button added to the project main window. So we simply added the action event handler to it, and this is the code in charge of creating a new menu item dynamically and adding them to the file recent items submenu. The first thing we do is assign the folder item variable called F, the file selected by the user through the dialog displayed via the Show Open File dialog menu from the folder item class. As you can see, we don't use any kind of file filter, so the user will be able to select any kind of file. Next, if we get a valid folder item that is not nil, then we add to the file name the tab character and the file path as a new row in the recent items menu collection array added as a property also to the app object. Next, and this is the more interesting section of the process, we proceed to create a new MyMenuItem instance populating some of its properties with the data we are interested in. For example, we set the text property to the name of the file, and the tag property to the native path of the selected file, and the pMenuItem callback to the address of the recent item callback method that will be invoked by the menu item when selected by the user. If we look at this method under the app object, we can see that it adheres to the signature set by our class delegate, receiving the caption and value as string parameters. In order to keep the example project simple, the method limits itself to display a dialog showing both the name and the path for the selected menu item. Last, once we set all the properties for our MyMenuItem instance, we only need to add it as a child for the file recent items menu, using the add menu method and passing along the MyMenuItem instance. While this code is responsible for adding menu items dynamically to our recent items submenu, this app would not be very useful if we don't provide some mechanism to save the recent items entries so we can load them later every time we run the app in order to rebuild the recent items menu. This is what we do once again from the app object, from the event handler close. So when the close event is fired, that is when we exit from the app, we create a folder item instance pointing to the application data directory and the recent items file. Then we open a text output stream on that file in order to iterate all the entries stored in the recent items collection array and save all of them as lines in the target file. So this is the fragment of code responsible for storing our recent items to a plain text file on the application data directory. Then we do the opposite in the open event handler, that is retrieving all of the data from the recent items file and rebuilding the menu items based on that information. So we have again the F variable pointing to the recent items file. We open a text input stream on that file, reading all of its contents to the temporary recent items array, using the toArray method and using end of line as the character separator to get every line as a new row for the array. Then we simply need to iterate all the items in the recent items array, creating a new MyMenuItem instance, and using the text at the left of the tab character as the menu item text, and the data at the right of the tab character as the tag for the menu item instance. Of course, we also need to set the pMenuItem callback to the address of the method that will be invoked when the user selects the menu item instance and adding it as a new child to the file recent items menu. So this is all the code we need to rebuild the recent items menu. If we run our example project again, we can see how it retrieves the last added items and then adds them as menu items to the recent items submenu under the file menu. And they even have the expected properties as the name and the original path pointing to the file on the disk. Of course, you can improve this approach. For example, you can include additional checks to verify that a file is added only once, something you can do easily iterating the contents of the recent items collection array before creating a new MyMenuItem instance. Another nice improvement would be limiting the number of recent items that the user can add to the recent items submenu. I hope this video was helpful. Please smash that like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel for notifications when a new video is posted. And if you have comments, please post them and we'll answer any questions that you have as well. Bye.